Stephen Kinnock, thank you for talking to Unheard. You've been part of a small group of MPs within the PLP who have been working hard to try to facilitate some sort of cross-party deal. What are the chances of it being successful ultimately?
Yes, so our view, we've created a group called MPs for a Deal, and it's a cross-party group. Let's not forget that 92% of the Conservative Parliamentary Party has voted for a deal at one point or another through the three iterations of the meaningful vote. We then had the cross-party talks, and Labour engaged very seriously in those talks. There were 6 weeks of talks which came up with a number of key concessions to Labour around a compromise on the customs union, around a bill on workers' rights, protecting environmental standards and consumer standards, and also a parliamentary lock saying that when the negotiations on the future relationship take place, Parliament should be consulted at key milestones in those negotiations. For me, that's a compelling package, actually. That is a package that we should have gone for. And I think the tragedy is that, unfortunately, because the Labour Party has allowed itself to be, in essence, run by the People's Vote campaign, certainly in the last 12 months, the decision was then taken to walk away from those parliamentary, the cross-party talks. So having pressed Theresa May to engage with us, when she finally did so, I think we didn't then engage properly and take that to the point where we would say, we will vote for the package that was produced from the cross-party talks. That package never came to Parliament. It was never debated on, never voted on. Let's give Parliament a chance to debate and vote on it, and let's say to the Prime Minister, that should be the basis of the deal that you do with the European Union and the deal that you bring to Parliament. The work that we're doing now is to shore up our support, to make sure that we have as many Labour MPs as possible. I think we've got a solid 24 that are in the position that I am, that we should respect the result of the referendum but get a good deal. And of course there are very many Conservative MPs who've already voted for the deal.
So there's a fighting chance.
A lot depends on the deal that the Prime Minister brings, and I'm not at all saying that what he brings should be a carbon copy of what his predecessor did. I understand the politics of this, we all do, we're not naive. But I think that if he can bring a deal which has as much as possible of those concessions in it, and the backstop, I've never met a Labour MP that has a problem with the backstop. And whether it's a Northern Ireland only backstop or a UK-wide backstop, our priority is to protect peace in Northern Ireland, and that means no hard infrastructure on the Irish border, and the backstop delivers that. So really it's about a package which says a backstop arrangement that can secure the support of the Conservative Party and at least the abstention of the DUP, and a package on the future relationship which ensures that we as Labour MPs are not just giving carte blanche to this Tory government. We're saying there will be certain checks and balances in the process, and I think that's the negotiation that's going on right now. And the more that the Prime Minister can bring a package that looks like that, the more chance he has of getting the numbers that will get the deal across the line.
There's been, and we've all seen it, there's been huge moves in the last few days, and the debate is being played out here at Labour Party conference, with people very much pushing the idea that Labour should explicitly embrace a Remain position for any future second referendum. In your view, what would be the consequences if that position were to carry?
The Labour Party has to be a whole nation party, and I think what we've seen in recent years is that we are on the point of tipping into a culture war. I think there is a very substantial part of our country that has been completely ignored and left behind by the political establishment, by the media, by business, by the civil service, by the power brokers of this country. And that, what we've seen is power and resources and talent and decision making shifting from our heartlands, from Labour's heartlands, to the cities, from people who don't have a university degree to people who do, and from people who have benefited, in essence, from globalization and what it's done to our country and to our economy and to our society. That, I think, it was what underpinned the referendum. There were, yes, the economy played a role, but actually it was about voice. It was about people feeling that they had been ignored by this, if you like, cosmopolitan power centre, primarily in London, but also in the other big cities.
I heard you say recently on that point that when you take a train between Westminster and your constituency in Aberystwyth, often it's like getting out in two different worlds. The divide is that profound, you think, do you?
I absolutely think it is. And if you look at the constituency that I represent, like so many others that have seen the manufacturing sector destroyed in the last 30 to 40 years, seen high streets becoming dominated by vaping shops and charity shops and betting shops, seen the whole narrative of their community being one of becoming voiceless, watching as cities and university towns were thriving and the rest of the country being left behind. These are our people. These are the people that the Labour Party was created to represent. And I think it would be a betrayal of our historic mission as a party if we said, in addition to having ignored and left you behind, and governments of all stripes did this, but of course it was turbocharged by Thatcher, and unfortunately, whilst I have a huge amount of time for what was achieved between 97 and 2010, we didn't do enough to reverse what Thatcher started in terms of we didn't have an industrial strategy, we didn't have the investment, we took our voters in those areas for granted. We have to recognise that if we, on top of all that, say, we also told you that you had a vote in this referendum and the result of that vote would be respected for a generation. If we turn around now and say, you're not going to have that either, we're just adding insult to injury. I think that the country would never recover from the culture war that we would be tipped into. I'm not saying necessarily that there would be civil strife in the streets at all, but I think we would end up with a nation that's so polarised and radicalised, where anger and frustration is at such levels that people would disengage from the political process altogether. And I think that can end up in a very, very dangerous place indeed.
The evidence suggests that over the years the Labour Party has become a more metropolitan-based, middle-class, liberal, cosmopolitan party. How confident are you that the Labour Party remains the vehicle that can speak for working class people, that it can restore some of those communitarian values that respect place, respect belonging, etc., and win back the hearts and minds of people in those communities who you say are so alienated?
Whatever happens with Brexit, we have to recognise that what the Labour Party should be is a vehicle for the radical Keynesian economic policies that we set out in our 2017 manifesto. We recognise that the economic model in this country is broken, that the massive imbalance, the sucking of resources and wealth and talent into London and the South East and away from manufacturing into services has been absolutely toxic for our country, economically, politically and socially. So we need those radical Keynesian economic policies to fix the broken economic model. But we have to marry that with a clear message to our communitarian heartlands that we believe in the value of place, of identity, that people who are citizens in this country need to take their responsibilities just as seriously as they do their rights. That some in the more metropolitan centres take their identity far much from the work they do or the skills they have, whereas people in communitarian areas have a very different understanding of what the good life actually means, and it's much more about the community that you're embedded in, the place that you were born and where you grew up. And we have to celebrate that, and what we also have to make absolutely clear that people who raise concerns about immigration and the impact that it's had on their communities, the fast-paced change without anything like the consultation, the integration, the investment in making it work, not having happened, to turn around and accuse those people of being xenophobes or bigots is completely and utterly unacceptable. And I worry that when you look at the membership of the Labour Party, the vast majority of that membership is concentrated in metropolitan areas and university towns. And of course, we have to be a coalition. We have to make sure that we have that coalition of cosmopolitans and communitarians so that we can be a whole nation party and reach out to the whole country and broaden our base. You're not going to win a general election otherwise. But you're certainly not going to win a general election if you carry on losing support in Mansfield and North East Derbyshire and our industrial heartlands, our communitarian heartlands. So we've got to build those bridges, and I think the way to do that is to have a radical Keynesian economic policy married with a very clear message that we are not the London Labour Party. We're a whole nation party, and a lot of that is about understanding the culture and the values and the identity and what people want from their communities and their families.